This is part 2 of the Crazy Quilt Messenger Bag. We're putting all the parts together and finishing it. It's fun and easy, so let's get started. In part 1 of this project, you will remember that we cut a 14 by 13 inch rectangle of 50 weight Pelon, and we rounded off the corners. This is going to be the front of the bag, and I'm going to use this focal print for the front. So my first step is to stitch around the edge of this Pelon to secure it to the fabric with about an 1/8 inch seam allowance. I've sewn around the edge and now I'm going to trim the seam allowance. I've chosen this orchid colored cotton velveteen for the construction of the bag. Velveteen has been always my go-to fabric. Velveteen and denim, sometimes denim, but it's just lovely and it works. It's the right thickness, but velveteen does have a nap. So this is down. So I want this to be down. So I will pin this right sides together, making sure the nap is in the right direction, and cut it out about 1/2 inch around the piece and stitch them together, right sides together, leaving an opening in the bottom for turning. This is sewn together and I left the opening, and now I will trim away this excess. I will clip off the top corners like this, boop. And I'll also clip these bottom corners so that I have a nice smooth curve. And then I'll turn it through the opening. That looks good. It's turned and pressed, and now I'm going to do a little top stitch along the top edge, and I'll also top stitch the bottom to close the opening. This piece is complete, so I will set it aside. Here's the back and flap panel that we created in part 1, and I'm going to stitch all the way around, leaving an opening here at the bottom, and then I will trim out the velveteen, turn it right side out, and top stitch all the way around. I've sewn and trimmed this, but before I turn it, I'm going to just clip into these rounded corners. Also, I've switched the color of my thread from this dark purple to a light purple that matches the velveteen. This piece that I call the back flap is ready to go, but I wanted to point out a couple of issues that I had and hope that you can avoid these. First of all, this piece right here, I wish that I would have fussy cut that, because you don't really see very much of the fun in this print. This one is the same print, different color, but it's kind of a happy accident, the way that the hand and the needle go right into the stitching there, and I love that. So I wish I would have done that over here. This was just an accident though. And then on the back, as I was working, I noticed these scissors, and I thought, oh, that would be fun to have the scissors coming into this piece right here, but now I can see that this is upside down. So those are just a couple of tips that I wanted to point out to you. Hopefully you won't make the same mistakes. This is my strap. I have 2 yards of the velveteen, so I've cut this 4.5 inches wide and 72 inches long. I won't need the entire 72 inches, but I just went ahead and cut it that long to give me some options, and I will show you what I mean. You probably won't need it quite that long. So I'm going to fold this right sides together, fold it this way, and stitch up this long edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to turn it to the right side. My strap is complete, and now I'm going to sew my gusset. The gusset is cut 6.5 inches by 45, and it's on the length of the grain. So I'll fold it in half, right sides together, and just stitch up only the long seam, and that's it. And then I'll turn it right side out. Here's my gusset. I sewed down the long edge, folded in half, and then I turned it, pressed it, and I set the seam on one edge, pinned it, and then I also pinned the other side, so the side without the seam. This project has 4 parts right now: the gusset, the back flap, the front, and the strap. So right now we're going to use the front and the gusset. I'm going to fold this in half at the bottom and place a pin right here at the center. That's just to mark the center. And then I'm also going to fold this in half, the gusset in half, and mark the center. I'm starting with the side that has the seam, right there. And then, now this is kind of weird because we're going to do this. We're just going to sew this together. Right sides together, like this. I'm going to pin all the way around. When I get to the corners here, I'm going to add a little bit of fullness. It's not exactly a pleat, but it's just a little bit of ease into the corner. And then all the way up to the edge, this is just pinning, then you'll see there's lots of extra fabric. So I'm going to tuck this in. I might trim off an inch or 2 before, but I want to tuck this in when I get to the top here, and then continue pinning all the way around, just like that. Both sides with the excess fabric tucked in. Here's my bag front. I did wind up cutting off about 2 inches from the end of each side of the gusset, and then tucked it in probably about 2 inches on each side. Also, when I began to stitch, immediately my needle broke. That's a lot of layers that you're sewing through. So I just switched to a 90 needle. I use the Schmetz needles on my Bernina, and that was no problem. I don't know what I had in before, but obviously was not up to the task. So I marked the center of my gusset right here, and also the center back of the back and the flap. And then I've marked the sides also at the halfway point. And you can imagine now the next thing that I'm going to do is match this up, right sides together, so it's like this, and just pin this around the same way, all the way around to here. So I'm going to pin this together with a gusset on the top. It's good to be able to see the gusset, especially when you're going around the corners. Make sure you have enough ease so that that will just be straight and flat. So that's the way I'm going to pin. Also, as I'm pinning my way around, when I get to the top, I'm going to stop a ½ inch below the center. Remember, this piece is a ½ inch shorter than the middle. So I'm going to stop a ½ inch below the center here. So I'm almost done pinning everything. And I have the gusset on the top. And then when it's all pinned, I will sew. I always back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. Okay, so here's how it looks. A ½ inch below here, I'm going to stitch all the way along. I'm going to back stitch, of course, carefully, with a little bit of fullness in the corners, carefully, and then back to up to here. And again, I have about a ½ inch, and I'm going to back stitch right there. You guys, that worked out perfectly. It's even, it's straight, it's a miracle. So now we're going to work on the strap. This is the only hardware that we use in this project. This is a D-ring that's 1 1/4 inches. You can get 1 inch, 1 1/2, 1 1/4 is the size that works for this project and for this width of a strap. For the side that has the D-rings, I'm going to cut off a 5 inch length of my strap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should be plenty. And then I'll thread these on. Fold it over. And then I like to put a pin here just to hold that so that when I'm sewing, I don't accidentally hit the metal. Now, I'm right-handed and I like to wear my bag on the left. So my right hand reaches into the left to get something out. So if I'm wearing it on my left side, I want the D-rings to be on this side, which is the right of the bag when you're looking at it from the front. Hope that makes sense. If you wear your bag on the left, put the D-rings on the right. That way they'll be in the back and they'll be out of your way. Also, remember one side has the seam, so it's a little thicker on one side, and I like that to be toward the back. So I'm going to insert this in this little opening that I left in the gusset, and it's going to be out about this far. I kind of like to center it in the middle of the gusset and then pin it. And now I'm going to make a rectangle. I'm going to stitch boop, 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 so that this strap is nice and secure. This turned out really well. There's my little rectangle. Here's how it looks on the inside. And you don't want a lot of slack in the D-rings. So now for the long piece of strap, you kind of want to determine the length. Sort of try it on, put it over your shoulder, and then give yourself about 12 extra inches. So this is the side with the extra seam allowance, and I'm going to tuck that in. Just one, this time it's just one layer. Tuck that in toward the back of the bag, and I have it about this far, about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. I will pin it and stitch a rectangle right here, just like we did for the first side. Here's the little rectangle that's holding the strap. And then to work the D-ring, I go through both rings and then over one. So you kind of go in between the rings, and I don't find that that's enough to hold it, so I do an extra loop around and form a knot like that. The strap is a little bit long, so I'm going to determine the length and cut it off, and then I'll show you how I finish the end. I wound up cutting this much off. It's probably about 8 inches. And now to finish, now I know bag specialists are going to be appalled, but what I like to do is just cut at an angle and finish this with a satin stitch. So a satin stitch is just a wide and close together stitch. It's not exactly super professional, but it gets the job done. And it actually looks kind of cute. Because we're covering a bias edge, it's a little twisty, but I just think it's cute. Through both rings, and then back up between the rings through one, like that. And then I think I need to make that a little longer. And then go around to the back, toward the back, so that the end is in back, like that. And then pull the flap around, like this. Okay, I'm going to get some dry cleaner bags to fill this and make it look very pretty. Thank you for watching my tutorial. If you're enjoying my videos, please like, share, and subscribe.